The great chamber of the Galactic Council stood silent as Ambassador Minji Park finished her speech. She had spoken for 20 minutes, presenting every argument humanity could offer. Her voice had been calm and professional, even as she explained why the proposed restrictions would hurt not just humans, but the entire galactic community. The council chamber was enormous. It floated in the center of Unity Station, a massive structure that had existed for over 10,000 years. 47 species had seats in this chamber. The eldest species, the Voth, had been traveling between stars for 30 millennia. The Keltharian Empire controlled 400 systems. The Thessarians had mastered physics that humans still struggled to understand. And humanity? Humans had joined the galactic community just 50 years ago. Counselor Velthris of the Voth stood slowly. His species looked like tall, thin trees made of crystal and light. When he spoke, his voice echoed through translation devices that every species wore. Ambassador Park, your words are noted, but they do not change the facts. In 50 years, your species has colonized 200 systems. The Keltharians took 3 centuries to colonize 200 systems. The Voth took 5 centuries. Your expansion is not natural. It is not safe. Minji kept her expression neutral. She had expected this. Counselor, humans expand because we must. Our home world was overcrowded. We needed space to grow, to build, to live. We have harmed no one. We have followed all established laws. Laws written for species that advance at reasonable speeds, said Counselor Krenthis of the Keltharian Empire. His species looked like massive bears covered in blue scales. Your military grows too fast. Your technology advances too fast. You do not respect the natural order of things. The natural order? Minji allowed some steel into her voice. Respectfully, Counselor, there is no law that says species must advance slowly. We work hard. We innovate. We dream. These are not crimes. The Sarian Counselor Iyara spoke next. Her species resembled 6-armed humanoids with silver skin. Her voice was gentler than the others. Ambassador Park, please understand. The Council has maintained peace for 8,000 years. We have done this by preventing any one species from becoming too powerful too quickly. Your species shows patterns we have seen before. Rapid expansion. Rapid, NET. Aggressive innovation. Pride in overcoming impossible challenges. These patterns have led to wars that destroyed civilizations. Minji took a slow breath. We are not seeking war, Counselor Iyara. We seek only to live, to grow, and to contribute to this community. Then you will accept the containment protocol, Velthris said. It was not a question. The containment protocol appeared on holographic displays throughout the chamber. Minji read through it quickly. Though she had seen earlier drafts, the terms were harsh. No new human colonies, beyond currently held systems. All new human technology must be shared with Council oversight committees. The human fleet must be reduced by 60%. Human scientists would need Council approval before researching certain fields. Human trade would be limited to approved partners. This is not a partnership, Minji said quietly. This is a cage. It is protection, Velthris replied. For you and for the galaxy. The protocol will remain in place for 1 century. After that time, if humanity has proven itself stable and peaceful, the restrictions will be reconsidered. 100 years. For the ancient species around her, a century was nothing. The Voth lived for 300 years naturally. The Keltharians had ruled their empire for 40 generations. But for humanity, a century was 3 or 4 human lifetimes. Minji would die under these restrictions. Her children would die under them. Her grandchildren might, if they were lucky, see them lifted. I request a vote, Minji said. The vote took less than 5 minutes. 43 species voted in favor of the containment protocol. Only 4 voted against it. The Thessarians voted no. as did 3 younger species who had joined the Council within the last 1,000 years. It was not enough. The containment protocol is now law, Velthris announced. Humanity has 30 days to begin compliance. Inspector Kelthris will oversee the implementation. Minji bowed slightly, the gesture controlled and diplomatic. The human government will consider your decision. We will respond within the required time frame. She walked out of the chamber with her back straight and her head high. But inside, her heart was breaking. 2 weeks later, Minji sat in a secure communication room on Unity Station. On the screen before her, the faces of Earth's government looked back at her. President Martinez, Prime Minister Okoye, Chancellor Zhang, Minister of Development James Torres, and 20 others, representing every major human nation and colony. They won't change their minds, Minji said. I have spoken with every sympathetic counselor. The votes are not there. If we refuse, they will enforce compliance with economic sanctions first, then military action, if needed. Can we fight? Asked a general whose face Minji recognized, but whose name escaped her in her exhaustion. Minister Torres answered, No, not now. Their technology is too advanced. Their fleet's too large. We would lose, and we would lose badly. So we accept the cage, President Martinez said bitterly. We accept the cage, Minji agreed. But we do not accept defeat. James Torres leaned forward. He was a young man for his position, only 45, with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Explain. The containment protocol limits our expansion. It limits our military. It limits our technology development. But it does not limit our innovation within existing systems. It does not limit our education. This way, with mating something Zarwan, it was Arponding in Sarwan. Arponding, it does not limit our determination. Minji felt something hard forming in her chest. Something that pushed away the despair. They think they are teaching us our place. They are actually giving us time to become something they cannot imagine. Torres smiled slowly. We build inward instead of outward. We perfect what we have instead of reaching for what we want, Chancellor Zhang added. And when these restrictions end, Prime Minister Okoye said, or when they try to make them permanent and force our hand, we will be ready, Minji finished. They will regret underestimating us. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would comply with the containment protocol. Publicly, humans would be model galactic citizens, restricted but peaceful. But privately, humanity would prepare. 24 days later, humanity officially accepted the containment protocol. The galaxy barely noticed. To the elder species, it was simply the natural order reasserting itself. Another young species had been taught proper limits. But in human spaces, in schools and factories and laboratories, something else was happening. A fire had been lit. Not a fire of rage, but of determination. Humanity had been caged. Now humanity would learn exactly what they could become within that cage. And when the cage opened, the galaxy would never be the same. 20 years had passed since humanity accepted the containment protocol. Inspector Kelthris of the Voth walked through the orbital manufacturing station above New Sol, humanity's third-largest colony world. His crystalline form reflected the lights of the factories below. Everything appears in order. His assistant, a younger Voth named Silthran, observed, Human production is within approved limits. No unauthorized military construction, no prohibited research. Kelthris nodded slowly. Humanity has been surprisingly compliant. They watched as human workers moved through the station. The workers were efficient, organized, and professional. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing seemed threatening. What Kelthris did not see was what lay beneath the surface. 3 levels below where the inspectors walked, Captain Sophia Chen stood in a restricted section that was not listed on any official plans. The room was filled with holographic displays showing ship designs that would have made the council very nervous. How long until the inspection team leaves? Sophia asked. 2 hours, replied her chief engineer, Marcus Wright. Same as always. They check the approved sections, file their reports, and leave. They never look deeper. Sophia studied the ship designs. They were beautiful, sleek vessels that used every loophole in the containment protocol. The protocol limited the number of ships. It limited weapon sizes. It limited engine power. But it said nothing about efficiency, nothing about design philosophy, nothing about what could be achieved by thinking differently. These ships use 40% less fuel than Council standard designs, Marcus explained. They are smaller, but faster. They carry fewer weapons, but more accurate ones. And they can be built 3 times as fast. Will they work? Sophia asked. We won't know until we test them in real conditions, Marcus admitted. But based on simulations? Yes, they'll work. Sophia was 28 years old. She had been born the year the containment protocol was passed. She had grown up in a humanity that was told it was expanding too fast, thinking too dangerously, dreaming too big. But her parents had told her a different story. They told her that humanity's dreams were not the problem. Fear was the problem. My mother says that when she was young, humans believed anything was possible, Sophia said quietly. Then the council taught us that some things are forbidden, but they didn't kill the dream. They just made us more creative. Marcus smiled. Your mother was part of the underground education initiative, wasn't she? Wasn't she? Sophia nodded. After the containment protocol passed, human governments had made a quiet decision. Public education would comply with council oversight, but private education, family education, community education would teach something else. They would teach human children that the restrictions were temporary, that humanity's potential was unlimited, that one day the cage would open. An entire generation had grown up with this knowledge burning in their hearts. On Earth, in a secure government facility, Minister James Torres sat with Ambassador Minji Park. Minji was 74 now. Her hair silver, her face lined with age, but her eyes were still sharp. The Nomathi have agreed, Torres said. They'll share their engineering database with us. In exchange, we provide them with our medical advances. The Nomathi were a species of skilled engineers who the Council had also restricted, though less severely than humanity. They had been trading secrets with humanity for 10 years now. It was technically illegal, but both species were careful. Very careful. That makes 12 species in our informal alliance, Minji said. All of them frustrated with the Council's rigid hierarchy. All of them seeing us as something different. Because we are different, Torres replied. He was 65 now. His black hair streaked with gray. We don't accept that the old species should rule forever simply because they're old. We believe in merit, in innovation, in change. The Council fears change, Minji said. The Council fears us, Torres corrected. And they should. Minji's assistant entered the room. Ambassador, you have a private call from Thessarian Counselor Iyara. Minji and Torres exchanged glances. Iyara had been one of the few counselors to vote against the containment protocol. Over the years, she had remained quietly sympathetic to humanity. The holographic display activated. Iyara's 6-armed form appeared, her silver skin gleaming. Ambassador Park, Minister Torres. I am afraid I bring troubling news. What has happened? Minji asked. The hardliners in the Council are planning to make the containment protocol permanent. They believe humanity has been too quiet, too compliant. They believe you have accepted your place. They want to ensure you never challenge it again. Torres's jaw tightened. The vote will happen in 6 months. They have the numbers. It will pass unless something dramatic changes. After Iyara disconnected, Torres and Minji sat in silence for a long moment. We knew this might happen, Minji finally said. Knowing something might happen and facing it are different things, Torres replied. If the protocol becomes permanent, everything we've built, everything we've prepared for, becomes worthless. We'll be trapped forever. Or we break free, Minji said quietly. That would mean war. Yes. Torres stood and walked to the window. Outside, Earth gleamed blue and green, beautiful and crowded. Humanity had not been allowed to expand to new systems in 20 years. Instead, they had built up. Massive orbital habitats circled every human world. Underground cities honeycombed the planets. Closed-loop ecosystems fed billions. Humans had learned to do more with less. We're not ready for war, Torres said. Then we have 6 months to become ready, Minji replied. Or we have 6 months to give them a reason not to vote for permanent restrictions. What reason would they accept? I don't know yet, Minji admitted. 3 months later, Captain Sophia Chen received her orders. She stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned ship, Persistence, humanity's first deep space vessel, built entirely after the containment protocol. Every component was legal. Every system met approved specifications. But together, they created something revolutionary. Captain Chen, the message from Fleet Command read, "You are authorized to begin patrol duties along the galactic rim. Your mission is exploration and observation within approved boundaries. Do not engage unauthorized contacts. Do not violate restricted space. But keep your eyes open. The galaxy is changing. We must be ready to change with it." Sophia read between the lines. The official mission was safe and boring. The real mission was to test the ship, train the crew, and be ready for whatever came next. "Helm, set course for the rim territories," Sophia ordered. "Course set, Captain," her helmsman, Park Jin-woo, replied. As the Persistence jumped to faster-than-light speed, Sophia thought about her grandmother's stories. Stories of a humanity that had dreamed of stars and been told to stay home. Stories of a humanity that had been caged and had learned to thrive in captivity. Stories of a humanity that was waiting for the right moment. "Captain," her sensor officer called out, "I'm picking up strange readings from the galactic rim. Very faint. Probably nothing." "Log it anyway," Sophia ordered. Everything matters now. She did not know it yet, but those faint sensor readings would change everything. The galaxy was about to face a threat that would force the Council to make a choice. And humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what 20 years of restriction had created. The cage had not broken humanity. It had forged them into something stronger. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Counselors from 47 species shouted over each other. Holographic displays showed the same horrifying images again and again. Entire colonies consumed. Fleets destroyed. Millions dead. The Krell had arrived. Ambassador David Kim, Min-ji Park's successor, stood quietly in the human delegation area. He was 42 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Not this exact moment, perhaps, but a moment when the galaxy would need humanity. Counselor Velthries finally restored order. His crystalline form pulsed with light as he spoke. "The reports are confirmed. An extragalactic force has entered our galaxy through the threshold gate. They call themselves the Krell. They are a hive mind. They consume technology, resources, and biological matter. To expand their collective, they have already destroyed 7 colony worlds and 2 full Keltharian battle fleets." Counselor Krenthus of the Keltharian Empire rose, his blue scales dark with rage and grief. "My people have faced many enemies. We have never seen anything like this. The Krell adapt to our weapons. They learn from each battle. Our best ships are useless against them. The Voth shielding technology also failed," added another counselor. "The Krell weapons pass through our shields as if they are not there." Thessarian counselor Iyara spoke, her voice cutting through the panic. "We must coordinate our response. Every species must contribute their full military strength. This is an extinction-level threat." "Agreed," Velthries said. "We will organize a combined fleet. The Keltharian Empire will provide the command structure. The Voth will provide defensive technology. The Thessarians will provide tactical coordination. Ambassador Kim cleared his throat. And humanity? The chamber fell silent. Every counselor turned to look at him. Humanity remains under the containment protocol, Velthris said carefully. Your military is limited. Your technology is restricted. We cannot reasonably expect significant contribution from your species. Kim smiled coldly. You mean you still do not trust us? It is not about trust, Krenthis said, though his tone suggested otherwise. It is about capability. Humanity has what? 200 approved ships? The Keltharian Empire is committing 4,000 vessels. The proportions are simply not comparable. Then we will provide what support we can with our limited resources, Kim said. Inspector Kelthris, who had overseen humanity's restrictions for 20 years, spoke up. I actually believe humanity might be safer remaining in their contained systems. The Krell advance will not reach human space for many months, perhaps years. By then, we will have defeated them. End quote. Perhaps, Kim said softly. Or perhaps you will need us. The council moved on to other matters. Battle plans. Evacuation protocols. Resource allocation. Humanity was barely mentioned. 3 days later, the Voth engagement fleet met the Krell at the Helios expanse. It was a slaughter. The Krell had adapted again. Voth shields meant nothing. Voth weapons barely scratched the Krell vessels. Of 40 Voth ships, only 3 escaped. 5 days after that, a combined Keltharian and Thessarian fleet tried to stop the Krell at the borderline gate. The battle lasted 8 hours. The Krell won decisively. The galaxy was losing. In the council chamber, panic had replaced organization. The Krell were 3 months from reaching the core worlds. Nothing seemed to stop them. Every strategy failed. Every weapon proved inadequate. We must consider evacuation, one counselor suggested. Move our populations beyond the Krell's reach. To where? Another demanded. They came from outside our galaxy. Where can we go that they cannot follow? Ambassador Kim stood. Counselors, may I speak? Velthris looked at him with exhausted eyes. What can humanity offer that the elder species cannot? A different way of thinking, Kim said. Your species have maintained peace for 8,000 years through tradition and hierarchy. You fight according to ancient honor codes and established tactics. The Krell are not bound by tradition. They adapt. They evolve. They do what works. And humanity can fight them? Krenthis asked, his voice heavy with skepticism. I do not know, Kim admitted. But humanity has spent 20 years learning to innovate under restrictions. We have learned to do more with less. We have learned to think creatively when traditional paths are blocked. Perhaps that is exactly what this fight needs. Thessarian counselor Iyara spoke. The ambassador has a point. We have tried our way. It is not working. What harm is there in trying something different? The harm is that humanity might use this crisis to break their restrictions, Kelthris said sharply. They might use our desperation to gain power. Kim laughed. And it was not a pleasant sound. Inspector, my species is facing the same extinction you are. The Krell do not care about politics. They will consume human worlds just as eagerly as Voth worlds. We do not need to gain power. We need to survive. The debate continued for hours. Finally, as another report came in of a colony world falling to the Krell, Counselor Iyara called for a vote. I propose we temporarily lift the containment protocol. Give humanity emergency authorization to deploy their full capabilities. If we survive this crisis, we can debate new restrictions afterward. If we do not survive, the restrictions are meaningless anyway. Velthris looked around the chamber. He saw fear. He saw desperation. He saw species who had believed themselves invincible now facing their own mortality, all in favor of temporarily suspending the containment protocol and granting humanity emergency military authorization. The vote was not unanimous. Kelthris voted against it. Several other hardliners did as well, but the majority voted yes. Survival outweighed fear. The containment protocol is suspended, Velthris announced. Ambassador Kim, your species has full authorization to deploy whatever forces and technology you have. We are placing tactical coordination for the next engagement under human command. Do not make us regret this. Kim bowed. We will show you what humanity has become. For better or worse, you asked us to join your galactic community. Now you will see what that truly means. Kim returned to his quarters and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. Minister Torres, now elderly but still sharp, appeared on the screen along with Fleet Admiral Hassan and half a dozen other human leaders. The restrictions are lifted, Kim said. We have authorization for full deployment. How long until the Krell reach the Kalros system? Torres asked. 4 days, Admiral Hassan replied. It's a mining colony. 40,000 civilians. The Council has already written it off as indefensible. Then that is where we make our stand, Kim said. Show them what 20 years of preparation has created. Show them that humanity does not abandon anyone. Not even 40,000 miners on a doomed colony. Torres smiled. Captain Sophia Chen has been waiting for this order her entire life. So has every other human in uniform. They're ready. Creeply Lan. Quote, good, Kim said. Because the galaxy is watching, and we need to show them something they have never seen before. Kim, good. Admiral Hassan began issuing orders. Across human space, hidden bases activated. Ships that the Council did not know existed emerged from concealed positions. Weapons that had been developed in secret were loaded and prepared. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a war they were forbidden to fight finally received their mission. On the bridge of the Persistence, Captain Sophia Chen received her orders and felt her heart race. This was it. Everything her grandmother had dreamed of. Everything her parents had prepared her for. Everything humanity had been building toward for 20 years. Helm, set course for Kalros system. Maximum speed, Sophia ordered. Communications. Send message to all human vessels. We're going to war, and we're going to win. As the Persistence jumped to faster-than-light speed, Sophia thought about the speech Ambassador Kim had given in the Council chamber. A different way of thinking. That was what humanity offered. Not bigger ships, not stronger shields, but the willingness to try the impossible and refuse to accept defeat. The Krell were about to learn what that meant. Captain Sophia Chen stood on the bridge of the Persistence as her ship dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Kalros system. What she saw made her breath catch. The Krell fleet was massive, hundreds of ships, each one looking like a piece of biological technology, all connected through invisible signals. They moved together like a school of fish. Perfectly coordinated. And they were moving toward Kalros Prime, where 40,000 miners and their families waited to die. Captain, we're receiving signals from human ships across the system, her communications officer said. Confirmed contacts. 1,783 vessels, all reporting ready for combat. 1,007. 2344. Sophia allowed herself a small smile. The Council had thought humanity possessed 200 ships. They had been very wrong. For 20 years, humans had been building, not the massive dreadnoughts that the elder species preferred, but smaller, faster, smarter vessels. Ships that could work together. Ships that could adapt. Captain, we're also receiving signals from non-human vessels, the communications officer added. Nomathi engineering ships, Yelthari scouts, Korlani supply vessels. 42 ships total from allied species, the species that the Council had overlooked. The younger civilizations. The ones who had been helping humanity in secret for years. They had come to fight too. The Runting and Avaklet, All ships, this is Captain Chen. Welcome to Calros. Today we show the galaxy that humans do not run. We do not hide. And we do not abandon our own. Command structure is as follows. Attack Wings Alpha through Gamma will engage the Krell directly. Wings, Delta and Epsilon will provide cover for evacuation operations. Wing Zeta will deploy experimental weapons. May fortune favor the bold. On the surface of Calros Prime, General Park Min-seo coordinated the evacuation. He was 35 years old. I Park Karinarm, 25, the grandson of Ambassador Min-ji Park. His grandmother had died 2 years ago, never living to see humanity's restrictions lifted. But her legacy lived in him. General, the Krell will reach orbit in 2 hours. His tactical officer reported. We have successfully evacuated 22,000 civilians. 18,000 remain. Then we hold for 2 more hours, Min-seo said firmly. Sir, the defensive positions cannot hold that long. The Krell ground forces are too strong. They will hold, Min-seo said. Because failure is not acceptable. Every minute we hold is another 100 lives saved. That is what matters. His soldiers, human and alien alike, prepared their positions. They were outnumbered. The Krell had already landed advance forces, but the humans had spent 20 years learning to fight smarter, not just harder. In space, Sophia watched as the Krell fleet adjusted to face the human vessels. The Krell had fought the Voth, the Keltharians, and the Thessarians. They had adapted to every tactic, every weapon, every strategy, but they had never fought humans. All wings, execute attack pattern chaos, Sophia ordered. The human fleet scattered. There was no formation, no rigid structure, no predictable pattern. Ships moved independently, each one choosing its own path, its own target, its own timing. To an outside observer, it looked like madness. To the Krell hive mind, used to pattern recognition and predictive algorithms, it was incomprehensible. Human ships darted in, fired, and retreated before the Krell could respond. They used the gravity of planets and asteroids to slingshot into unexpected positions. They deployed small drone swarms that moved erratically, drawing Krell fire away from the manned vessels. Krell fleet is attempting to adapt, Sophia's tactical officer reported. They're spreading their forces to cover more attack vectors. Good, Sophia said. That means they're reacting to us, instead of executing their own plan. Keep the pressure on. One of Sophia's squadron leaders, Commander Lee Sung-min, found an opening. His wing of 30 ships had been harassing the Krell's left flank. When the Krell shifted forces to deal with them, Lee saw his chance. All ships, full thrust toward Krell command node, Lee ordered. Sir, that's a suicide run, his second officer said. No, Lee replied. It's a sacrifice run. There's a difference. His ships accelerated directly toward the largest Krell vessel, the one coordinating the hive fleet. Krell weapons tore into his formation. Ships exploded. Crews died. But the survivors kept coming. At the last moment, Lee's ships released their missiles and veered away. Most of the missiles were destroyed by Krell defenses. But 3 got through. They struck the command node. And for just a moment, the entire Krell fleet hesitated as the hive mind re-established connection. That moment was enough. Human ships that had been waiting for exactly this opening struck from 4 directions simultaneously. The Krell, still reorganizing, could not coordinate their defense. 20 Krell ships were destroyed before they recovered. Sophia's heart ached as she watched Lee's wing limp away. He had started with 30 ships. 14 remained. But his sacrifice had worked. All wings, the Krell can be disrupted. Focus fire on command nodes. Break their coordination. The battle raged for an hour. Humans lost ships. The Krell lost ships. But slowly, the human tactics began to work. The Krell were stronger, more numerous, better armed, but humans were unpredictable, creative, stubborn. On the surface, General Park's forces were being pushed back. Krell ground troops, massive insect-like machines, advanced on the evacuation site. Human soldiers fired everything they had: energy weapons, missiles, even old-fashioned bullets. When nothing else remained, "General, the evacuation ships are full," his communications officer said. "We can lift off now." "How many civilians are still waiting?" Park asked. 3,000. "Then we stay." A young lieutenant, barely 20 years old, looked at Park with wide eyes. "Sir, if we stay much longer, the Krell will overrun our position. Then we hold until we cannot hold any longer," Park said. "And when we cannot hold, we retreat while firing. And when we cannot retreat, we make our stand." "Those are civilians, Lieutenant. Miners and children and teachers and farmers. Every single one of them matters." The lieutenant nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "Noni. Noni. 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 Noni." Park's forces held. They held when it seemed impossible. They held when the rational choice was retreat. They held because that was what humans did. In space, Sophia received an urgent message. "Captain, Krell reinforcements are arriving. Another 200 ships." Sophia's jaw tightened. Her fleet had taken losses. They were down to 1,400 operational ships. Even with the Nomathi and other allies, they were still outnumbered. "Captain Chen," a voice said over the communications channel. It was Captain Theron, a Nomathi engineer commanding a support vessel. "My people have an idea. It is risky." "Tell me," Sophia said. "The Krell use their hive mind to coordinate. They are connected through quantum signals. If we could generate quantum interference across the right frequency. Armor. We could blind them," Sophia finished. "Do it. What do you need?" 6 human ships equipped with quantum disruptors. They will need to get very close to the Krell fleet. Most will not survive. Sophia did not hesitate. "I will lead the strike myself." Persistence is equipped with quantum technology. Her crew did not argue. They had trained for this. They had prepared their entire lives for this. Sophia's strike force of 6 ships dove into the heart of the Krell fleet. The alien vessels swarmed them. Weapons fire from every direction. Sophia's shields collapsed. Her hull breached in 3 places. Her engine room reported critical damage. "Quantum disruptors ready," her engineering officer said, her voice steady despite the ship shaking around her. "Fire," Sophia ordered. The quantum disruptors activated, sending cascading interference across the frequencies the Krell used to communicate. For 5 precious seconds, the Krell hive mind went completely silent. Every Krell ship stopped moving. 5 seconds. It was enough. The human fleet, prepared for exactly this moment, struck with everything they had. Missiles launched. Energy weapons fired. Kinetic rounds tore through Krell hulls. The aliens, unable to coordinate, fell in massive numbers. Sophia's ship was dying around her. "All hands, evacuate to escape pods. This is the captain. I am ordering abandoned ship." "Captain, your pod is damaged," her executive officer said. "Then I hope the backup systems work," Sophia replied calmly. "Go." "That's an order." Her crew evacuated. Sophia stayed at her station until the last person was off the ship. Then, and only then, did she head for her escape pod. She sealed herself inside and launched just as the Persistence exploded. The pod tumbled through space, damaged and barely functional. Sophia watched through the small viewport as the human fleet continued to fight. The Krell were recovering, but they had been badly hurt. The battle was not over, but the tide had turned. Sophia's pod was picked up by a Nomathi rescue ship 3 hours later. By then, the Battle of Calros was finished. The Krell had retreated. All 40,000 civilians had been evacuated. The human fleet had survived. It was the first major victory against the Krell. And the galaxy had been watching. The victory at Calros changed everything. For the first time since the Krell invasion began, the galactic community had hope, but hope came with a price. The battle had proven that humans could fight the Krell effectively, but it had also shown how costly that fight would be. Captain Sophia Chen had recovered from her injuries. She stood now in a different ship, a larger one, with a name that carried weight, the Ambassador Park, named after the woman who had endured 20 years of restrictions with dignity and never lost faith in humanity's potential. Sophia had been promoted to Fleet Admiral. At 32 years old, she was the youngest person ever to hold that rank in human military history. She stood on the bridge of her flagship and looked at the holographic display showing the entire galactic situation. Red markers showed Krell-controlled space. It was still massive, still growing. Blue markers showed the combined galactic fleet, now under human tactical command. Green markers showed evacuation routes and secured systems. Admiral, all fleet elements report ready, her operations officer said. We have ships from 23 different species. Total combined force, 8,400 vessels. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. And it was still not enough. The Krell controlled the threshold gate, the natural wormhole they had used to enter the galaxy. As long as they held it, more Krell could keep arriving from their home territory. The Krell must be expecting us to defend the core worlds, Sophia said. Every battle so far has been defensive. We react to their attacks. That is standard defensive doctrine. Thessarian counselor Iyara said. She had joined Sophia's command staff as a strategic advisor. Protect what matters most. 3. But what if we don't? Sophia asked. What if we go on the offensive? What if we take the fight to them? Ambassador David Kim, who had also joined the flagship, nodded slowly. You want to attack the threshold gate directly. It is suicide, a Keltharian admiral said. The Krell have fortified that position with everything they have. We would be destroyed. Maybe, Sophia admitted. Or maybe they won't expect it. Elder species fight defensively because you value what you have. You want to protect your long histories and ancient civilizations. But humanity is young. We have less to lose. And we're used to taking risks. The debate lasted for hours. But in the end, Sophia's plan was approved. Not because everyone agreed it would work, but because every alternative ended in slow defeat. 3 days later, the combined galactic fleet assembled at the staging point. Sophia looked at the ships around her. Keltharian dreadnoughts, Voth, science vessels, Thessarian carriers, Nomathi engineering ships, and humans. Thousands of human ships, each one crewed by people who had grown up being told they were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too ambitious. All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Chen. In 1 hour, we will jump to the threshold gate. The Krell will have every advantage. They will be defending their supply line. They will outnumber us. They will have fortified positions. By every traditional military calculation, we should lose. She paused. But we are not fighting traditionally. We are fighting to survive. We are fighting for every species in this galaxy. We are fighting because giving up is not an option. When we arrive, remember this. The Krell are strong, but we are stubborn. They are numerous, but we are creative. They are a hive mind, but we are individuals who choose to stand together. That makes all the difference. The fleet jumped. The battle at the threshold gate lasted 14 hours. It was the most brutal combat any species had ever experienced. The Krell fought with desperate fury. They knew that losing the gate meant losing the war. Human ships led every charge. Sophia's tactics were brutal and efficient. She sacrificed smaller vessels to create openings for larger ones. She used Nomathi engineering teams to repair critical systems in the middle of combat. She deployed Yelthari scouts to find weak points in Krell formations. General Park Minseo led ground forces onto a Krell station near the gate. His mission was to plant a quantum disruptor directly in the Krell communication hub. His team of 500 soldiers fought through 3 times that many Krell defenders. Park watched his soldiers fall one by one. Each death hurt, but they kept advancing because the mission mattered more than any individual life. That was what his grandmother had taught him. That was what humanity understood better than any other species. "General, we're at the hub," his sergeant said. The man was bleeding from a dozen wounds, but still standing. "Plant the disruptor," Park ordered. They did. The device activated, sending a cascade of quantum interference through the entire Krell network in the sector. Every Krell ship, within 100,000 kilometers, went silent. "All ships, focus fire on the gate structure itself," Sophia ordered. "We're not just pushing them back, we're closing the door." The combined fleet poured every weapon they had into the threshold gate's stability field. The ancient natural wormhole had existed for millions of years, but even ancient things could be changed. The gate collapsed. The destruction was spectacular. The wormhole folded in on itself, creating a brief explosion of exotic matter and twisted space-time. Every Krell ship near the gate was destroyed instantly. The remaining Krell fleet, suddenly cut off from reinforcements and unable to coordinate effectively, began to fall apart. "All ships, pursue and destroy," Sophia ordered. "Do not let any Krell vessel escape." The hunt lasted 3 more weeks. Without the gate, without central coordination, without hope of reinforcement, the Krell were defeated system by system. Some surrendered, some self-destructed, some fought to the last ship. But in the end, they were eliminated from the galaxy. 6 months later, Sophia stood in the Galactic Council chamber. It looked different now. There were more seats, more species represented. The old hierarchy had been challenged by the crisis, and some things had changed. Councillor Velthris spoke first. "Fleet Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we thank you and your species for your service. Humanity has proven itself worthy of our trust." Sophia nodded politely, but inside, she felt anger stirring. "Worthy of your trust? Counselor, with respect, we did not fight this war to earn your approval. We fought because extinction was the alternative." The chamber fell silent. "For 20 years, you restricted us because you feared what we might become." Sophia continued. "Then you needed what we became. The question is not whether we are worthy of your trust. The question is whether we can trust you not to cage us again now that the crisis has passed." Inspector Kelthris stood. The Voth who had overseen humanity's restrictions for 2 decades looked older now, dimmer. "Admiral Chen, I owe your species an apology. I believed the restrictions were necessary for galactic safety. I was wrong. Humanity's strength did not come from unlimited power. It came from learning to thrive under limitations. You became what you needed to be, not what we feared. I am sorry." It was the first time in recorded history that a Voth had apologized to a younger species. Thessarian Councillor Iyara rose. "I propose that the containment protocol be permanently abolished. Furthermore, I propose that humanity be granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. And finally, I propose the creation of a new Council of Rising Species to ensure that younger civilizations have a voice in galactic governance." The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. 42 species voted in favor. Only 5 voted against. "The motions pass," Velthris said. "Ambassador Kim, please join us at the council table." David Kim walked forward and took his seat among the council members. He thought about Ambassador Park, who had fought for this moment, but never lived to see it. He thought about the soldiers who had died at Kalros, at the Threshold Gate, in 100 battles, across 3 months of desperate war. I accept this seat on behalf of humanity, Kim said. But I also accept it on behalf of every species that has been overlooked, restricted, or underestimated. We will not forget what it feels like to be caged, and we will ensure it never happens again. Minister James Torres, now 85 years old, watched the proceedings from Earth. He was too frail to travel to Unity Station anymore, but he could watch through holographic transmission. He smiled as he saw humanity take its place among the galactic leadership. Minji would have been proud, he said to his assistant. Sir, there's one more item on the agenda, his assistant said. Torres read the report. The Nomathi had formally requested an alliance with humanity. So had 6 other species. They wanted to form a federation of younger civilizations, working together for mutual benefit and protection. Approve it, Torres said. Humanity rose from restrictions by building alliances in secret. Let the galaxy see what cooperation looks like when it's based on mutual respect instead of fear. On a human colony world, a child looked up at the stars and asked her father, "Is it true that we were once told we couldn't expand to new systems?" Her father nodded. Yes, the elder species were afraid of how quickly we grew. What happened? We proved that speed is not the problem. The problem is what you do with it. We could have used our growth to conquer. Instead, we used it to protect. We showed them that humanity's strength comes not from being unrestricted, but from choosing what to do with our freedom. The child thought about that. So we're not special because we're strong? We're special because we chose to be strong for others, not just for ourselves. In the years that followed, humanity became a bridge between the ancient species and the younger ones. They remembered what it felt like to be restricted, and used that memory to ensure fairness. They remembered what it felt like to be underestimated, and used that memory to see potential in others. The galaxy changed. The rigid hierarchy that had existed for thousands of years began to give way to something more flexible, more inclusive, more alive with possibility. Not because humanity forced change, but because humanity showed that change could make everyone stronger. Sophia Chen, years later, stood on the bridge of a new ship. The galaxy was at peace. The Krell were gone. The Council had reformed. But her mission continued. She led an exploration fleet into uncharted space, seeking new worlds, new civilizations, new possibilities. Admiral, we're approaching the target system, her helmsman said. Sophia smiled. Take us in. Let's see what's out there. She had spent her youth in a cage. Now she spent her life proving that humanity had learned something precious from that experience. They had learned that restrictions could forge strength, that adversity could teach creativity, that being underestimated could become an advantage. The Galactic Council had tried to stop humanity. They had tried to limit human potential out of fear. But in trying to stop humanity, they had created something they never expected. They had created a humanity that was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. A humanity that had learned to thrive in captivity, and then used that lesson to help others flourish in freedom. A humanity that had been caged and emerged not with rage, but with purpose. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.